So now we're going to talk about the process of buying a car under the installment loan plan, and we're going to prepare what is known as an amortization schedule, and that is a schedule that shows how much of your payment each month goes toward the principal that you borrowed for the car, how much of that payment is going toward interest, which is the cost of borrowing the money. So to do this, we're going to look at a 2012 Kia Sorento that's listed at $23,900, and we're going to assume that includes all the taxes and registration and everything that you have to pay. And so that's the amount that you're going to borrow minus a small down payment of $3,900. So the terms of the loan are as follows. It's a 5-year loan with a 4% annual percentage rate and a down payment of $3,900. And we're going to be asked to find the following: the monthly payment, the total interest for the loan, and an amortization schedule showing the first 3 months of payments, and we'll do that manually. And then I'll show you an amortization schedule for the length of the loan using a website that I'll make available to you. So first, let's start with the monthly payment. And to do that, we have to find the amount that we're going to borrow, or the amount of the loan. So we need to subtract our down payment of $3,900 from the amount that we have to borrow, and that gives us a $20,000 loan. And we have to use our payment formula, and this is the same payment formula that we use when we're calculating the payment for a house that's being amortized over a certain number of years with a fixed payment. P stands for the principal amount. That's the amount borrowed. That's the $20,000. R stands for the rate. Our rate is 4% annually. That rate has to be changed to a decimal, so 4% is going to be 0.04, because you take the decimal that's at the end, you move it 2 places to the left, and you have to fill in with a 0. That's divided by N, the number of payments made each year, which we're going to pay monthly payments, so that would be 12. In the denominator, we follow the formula 1 minus parentheses 1 plus the rate divided by the number of payments again, and that is all raised to the power of negative N times T, where N is the number of payments in a year and T is the length of the loan, 5 years in this case. So I want to caution you, the multiplication of the numerator is no big deal. You'll get that right, not a problem. But when you do this denominator in your calculator, although if you do it separately, you don't need these outer parentheses. You do need the parentheses around the 1 plus 0.04 divided by 12, and you need to either put parentheses around the negative 12 times 5, or you need to type in a negative 60 and use the caret key for exponent. Now, if you do this correctly, do your numerator separately from your denominator, and these are the values you're going to get. Carry each one of them to the number of decimal places that you see on your calculator, about 9 places, and you will eventually come up with a payment to the nearest cent of $368.33. Now, that's $368.33 for every month for 5 years. So that's actually 60 payments. So to figure out the total interest for the loan, we're going to have to figure out that total of those payments. The monthly payments times the number of payments gives us our total of all the payments. So there's that 60 months again. Remember, that comes from 12 months in a year times 5 years. That's a total of 60 months, or 60 payments that we have to make on this car because the loan is for 5 years. Multiply that out, you get $22,099.80. $22,099.80. Since we only borrowed $20,000, we subtract our loan amount and we get $2,099 $3.80 in interest. That's the cost to borrow that money for 5 years. Now, these are not massive interest charges like you see when you borrow a house, because the length of the loan is much shorter, and when the term of the loan is shorter, the interest is not going to be as much. And this rate was pretty low too. 4% is a pretty low rate. So now we're going to have to find the amortization schedule for the first 3 months, and we're going to do this manually. And so here we've got R divided by N. That's the rate divided by the number of payments. And I've made a note what that value is because you're going to see it in the amortization chart that I'm providing to help you understand how this is done. So I've provided a little more detail than you may see in some of the book examples or some of the other examples online. And I'm doing only 3 payments. I've got an interest rate that is equivalent each month. The amount of the interest, the amount of the payment, and the principal. Now, the way that I got this first amount of interest is I took the $20,000 beginning balance and I multiplied it times this rate, 0.00, and then a bunch of 3s. Go at least 9. And that's where I got $66.67. Now our payment we had already determined by that payment formula. This amount is the amount that's needed to reduce the loan to 0 after 5 years. And that was calculated by that formula. So our payment minus our interest is the amount of the principal, or the amount that goes directly toward the car, versus the amount that's charged for borrowing the money. And so our loan balance is only reduced by the principal, not by the interest, because only the principal amount gets applied to the loan. The interest is strictly a charge for borrowing the money. That brings us to $19,698.34 if you reduce the $20,000 minus this principal. Now, notice that the second amount of interest has gone down. That's because the second time we're calculating our interest, it's based on the new loan balance, which is not $20,000 anymore, $19,698 and some change. So you take the loan balance. Now remember, it started out originally at $20,000. We multiplied times 0.333 to get the interest. We subtracted that from the payment to get the principal. We subtracted the principal from the loan to get the new balance. We take the new loan balance, we multiply it by the interest to get the amount of interest. We subtract the interest from the payment to get the principal. We subtract the principal from the previous balance to get the new balance. One more time. We have a balance now of $19,395.67. We apply the monthly rate to that. So you take the $19,395.67, multiply it by the rate, 0.00, followed by 9 3s. You get, and ignore that little F in there, you just get $64.65. That's the interest. You subtract the interest from the payment, which is the same, based on our payment formula, to get the amount that goes toward the principal. And to get the new balance, you subtract the principal amount paid from the previous balance, and that's where the $19,091.99 comes from. Now this can be a little difficult because there are a lot of details to remember here. So I just want to take you through it one more time to make sure you get it. And this time I'm going to add the $20,000 up here because that's our loan balance when we start. Where does the $66.67 come from? The loan balance times the interest rate gives us the interest. The principal payment comes by taking the payment minus this interest. To get the new balance, you take the earlier balance, in this case the very beginning balance of $20,000, subtract the principal amount, you have a new balance. To get the next amount of the interest, you multiply the latest balance times the rate again. You'll get the interest for the second month. Subtract that from the payment to get the principal for the second month. Subtract the principal from the previous month's balance to get the new balance. Repeat the cycle. Take the current balance, multiply it times the rate. So that's this 19,000 times this number. You will get this amount for interest, $64.65. Subtract that from the payment to get the principal. Reduce the previous month's balance by the principal only. Now, one thing you should notice here, if you're doing this right and you get your amortization schedule right, your interest is going down while your principal is going up. But they always add up to the total payment of $368.33. But as you move forward, more and more money goes to the actual loan and less money goes to the interest. Now, we did it for 3 months, but remember that over the entire length of this loan, it would be 60 payments or 60 months. So it's nice to be able to go out and use a website in order to see this and to do it, although you should be able to do it manually for a few months just so you'll understand how it works. So the website we're going to use is http://www.amortization-calc.com. Now, if you just Google amortization calculator or amortization schedule, you'll get a number of these, but this one happens to be a pretty good one that I've used before. So let's put in the amount of our loan was $20,000. We're not too concerned about our credit rating here because we're not actually applying for a loan. Let's just put in what we know. And we can say it's going to start in November. Let's say we're going to buy this car in November. So look what I have put into my amortization calculator. Loan amount, $20,000 like we just had. Interest rate 4, 5 years, start in November. And instead of displaying by year, let's display it by month. And let's calculate. All right, so here's the amortization schedule that we just got. And I want to compare. Notice that the first month's interest shown is $66.67, just as we got. The second month, $65.66. The third month, $64.65. The payment is not indicated here, but up here you will notice that the payment is indicated. It tells you the total interest paid, which matches up exactly with what we got. The total of the 60 payments matches exactly with what we got. And you can actually see this principal, this interest column going down, this principal column going up, and the actual balance of this for the entire 60 months. And you'll notice it ends up at $0. And so this website can be very useful for you when you're trying to buy a car or when you're trying to verify that you've done one of these problems correctly. Now, I do encourage you to use this to help you check, but remember that for the final exam, you'll have to be able to do this manually, so make sure that you're not relying on this too heavily when you're doing your homework exercises.